It's the Security Weekly News. It is Friday, the 26th of April, 2024, and it's episode 381 of this show. We missed the last Fibonacci number, which was 377, and there will be another one for a while. So if we're still around, it'll be interesting. Today we got TikTok, Flowmon, Cisco, Brokewell, RuggedCom, Deepfakes, non-competes, Aaran Leyland, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News.
Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
All right, from the island of Elba, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button like there's no tomorrow. It's only mildly addictive, and most people recover. It'll be okay. Just go ahead. Go ahead. You'll be all right. Yeah. Take deep breaths. All right. Progress Flowmon is a tool for monitoring network performance and visibility, if you've never heard of it. And there's a flaw in it that has a CVSS score of 10. And we don't see that many CVSS 10s, but this is one. Rhino Security Labs found this flaw. So more than 1,500 companies use this product in their enterprise. So this is a pretty large, I presume it's expensive. I've never used it, so that usually means it's expensive. Now, the flaw was actually first announced on the 4th of April when Progress, who's the company that makes this, announced the flaw was out there and urged users to upgrade to the latest releases. The updates were released automatically to all Flowmon customers if you're using the automatic package download system, which probably you aren't, but you could download it manually from Flowmon as well if you knew about it and got the notice and actually did it. They also said that you should upgrade all Flowmon modules after the update. So to multiple steps, but some people didn't do that as ever. And as of now, guess what? There's exploit code available. Yep. Rhino Labs did release technical details for the vulnerability along with a demo of how it can be exploited to install a web shell and gain root. So a handy dandy demo there, and I'm not discouraging it. I think it's great stuff, and it encourages people to patch, and it encourages companies to not need patches. But nevertheless, it's out there. Italian CSIRT warned 2 weeks ago that an exploit was available that was published on the 10th. So the latest one from Rhino was actually already preceded by another one. Showdown and Hunter showed that we were up to 100 instances vulnerable. And remember, this is a enterprise-wide kind of tool, so 100 instances doesn't sound like much, but that's a lot of companies that have vulnerable, exposed instances of something like this. FOFA search engine showed 500 Flowmon servers, but it wasn't clear how many of those were vulnerable. So if you have this, would you just please patch it? I mean, I know I'm always asking that, but come on. Cisco issued a warning this week that a state-sponsored group has been exploiting 2 zero-day vulnerabilities in ASA and Firepower, which are Cisco's main firewall platforms, with Firepower being the current one, I believe. Remember Pix? I love those old Pix boxes. They were so awesome. I think I've still got one somewhere in a storage building. And it's always sad to have to take old equipment out to the forest, but we all get old, and at some point they take you to the forest. Yeah, I keep telling my cats about that. The forest, you see it back there? Yeah. Anyway, this group is called UAT 4356 by Cisco Talos, and they began targeting the firewalls all the way back in November of 2023 in a campaign which Talos called Arcane Door, which sounds a lot like a D&D spell. Actually, I think it is a D&D spell, but I could be wrong. I don't know. fireball, fireball, fireball. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But Cisco has not yet identified what the initial attack vector was, but they did find and patch 2 security flaws which did allow denial of service and persistent local code execution that were used in the attacks. Cisco said they first became aware of Arcane Door in early January of this year, and they found evidence that the attackers had been testing and exploiting these vulnerabilities since at least July of 2023. Basically, what happens is the attack allows the establishment of persistence on your edge firewall, and then they can install a product called Line Dancer, which is a memory-only shellcode loader. So this is not written to the disk, and in Cisco devices, that's pretty important. It also installs a persistent backdoor called Line Runner. So basically, at that point, they would have full-blown access to your border firewall, which, the official term is bad. According to a joint statement from the UK National Cybersecurity Centre, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and the Australian Signals Directorate Australian Cybersecurity Centre, which is a collection of 3 entities who all spell center with the R before the E and curb with a K, the attackers used the flaws to allow them to generate text versions of the conf file so it could be easily exfiltrated with a web request. So they literally put this up as a web request. And I mean, I don't know how much you know about Cisco equipment, but the conf files are critical. And a lot of times conf files have passwords and things unencrypted in them. There's a way around that. If you're unclear, let me know and I'll tell you. But that was one of the first things we always asked for on network pen tests was a copy of the Cisco confs. And if they gave them to us, we often had the root passwords for everything in a company. Yeah, we were geniuses, but it worked. Basically, this thing can then modify the AAA, which is Cisco's Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting System, which is what controls users' access. It controls logging. It controls all kinds of stuff. So, again, bad. Now, having managed ASA, well, I would be terrified of this. But I never had a firepower since those pesky budget cuts happened. And, would one of you people please endow me a lab? I mean, some of you are so rich, it's ridiculous. And, we need a sponsor for the news as well. Or they've told me we're going to have to turn this into a religious programming show. And I hate having to put that much spray on my hair. But, I mean, I can do it, and I will. Oh, Lord, we're going to turn this into the Evangelical Security Hour or something like that. But, you know what I mean. Anyway. This is nasty, and Cisco did release security updates on Wednesday to fix the 0 days and, quote, strongly recommends everyone perform the upgrades. Yeah. They do have links to a lot of Cisco resources on that article that have detection, and so forth. So if you're using this kind of equipment and you haven't patched it, or even if you did patch it, you may want to download this to check for signs of compromise and so forth. Well, if you haven't gotten used to patching Chrome all the time since, say, this morning, well, you probably need to. It seems like they put out a patch several times a week now. In fact, every time I sit down with Chrome open, it usually says, please relaunch to update. So they're patching it a lot. But hey, at least they patch it. I'd rather they patch it every 2 hours if that's what it takes. But Google issued a Windows and Mac patch and is planning a Linux patch shortly for critical vulnerabilities found in Chrome. Google said that the flaw was a type confusion flaw in Angle, and if you don't know, Angle is the graphics engine in Chrome. Type confusions, if you don't know what those kind of issues are they're sort of the term came from C, and basically it was a union in C where you combine various types and it causes unusual results. But it can also be found in JavaScript, PHP, Perl, all kinds of things have type confusion attacks. A really overly simple example of these types of attacks is something I remember from C very well. If you take an integer variable and you assign it a character like A, the variable stored would be the ASCII value of that character. So like 65. And this is not really a type confusion vulnerability. I mean, it's a feature, not a flaw. And in this case, it really is a feature of C, but it can certainly be something that a lot of hackery type people like to experiment with, pushing things into buffers to see what happens. For instance, in PHP, if you provide array parameters instead of scalar values, which are expected, it can cause really unusual behavior. It can cause crashes. It can cause all sorts of strange things to happen. But both JavaScript and PHP use what they call dynamic typing. And what that means is that the variable that is set up is actually typed at runtime. So as it's live, it changes types and storage techniques instead of like during compiling and linking like you would see in C or something like that. So this means that experimentation with it can provide some interesting hackery type opportunities. And in this case, a flaw could allow the launch of arbitrary code execution or sandbox escapes. Again, as they say in the industry, bad. And it can be done via automation, which means it's really bad. Google said Curious with a Q Secure found the bug and was awarded $16,000 for this. These kind of flaws can allow all sorts of exploitation of the browser without interaction with the victim. So this is one of those things where they put up a clickbait kind of thing and you click it and a page comes up and you don't have to do anything else and nobody worries about it. But in the background, this kind of stuff can be automatically running to exploit you. The guidance here from Google is, of course, that you should update Chrome immediately. I really encourage you with any browsers you're supporting in your enterprise to have plans in place for these updates as quickly as possible, because not only they get announced regularly, they get exploited very quickly as soon as they're announced. So people are out there looking, so just be ready. And speaking of browsers, a really common vector is to send out something or have a clickbait kind of thing that says browser update on it. And you've probably all seen these pop-ups and things like that that say update your browser now. Not on Chrome per se, but like a pop-up box that says your Chrome is out of date. You need to update it immediately. Blah blah blah. And a lot of people go for that. A lot of people see that pop up and it says to continue, please update Chrome. And, they just click it. Now, the latest round that this article was talking about is focused on Android. And it's basically pushing out a new malware that is called Brokewell. And Brokewell is a banking malware that has data theft capabilities, remote control capabilities, and so forth, according to Threat Fabric. The malware was described as being in active development and evolutionary, and that new commands are being added to allow all sorts of things to it, including the capture of touchscreen events, screenshots, and applications that a victim are launching are all being reported back to command and control. There are Brokewell apps that are focused on Chrome, ID Austria, and Klarna currently, but that can obviously grow very quickly. When the malware runs a first time, it prompts the victim, just like everything you ever install, to grant permissions to it to allow it to access accessibility services on your Android. Yeah. Once it has that, it can grant permissions to itself using the accessibility services, and then it can display overlay screens, which is, of course, a way to capture SMS text messaging and things like that. Of course, overlay screens can also be used to capture your credentials when you type them in. And on and on and on. It can steal credentials. It can steal cookies. It has a technique where it launches a web view of a specific site that's legitimate. And then that overlay attack basically allows it to capture your keystrokes, and a cookie stealer allows it to get the session cookies. And then that means they can, of course, go to that session that you just logged into and have a lot of stuff. And all this, of course, gets transmitted back to command and control. The malware can already record audio from your phone, screenshots, dump call logs, location information list, all install apps, and record every event happening on the device. So it sounds like one of those, Phoenix type spyware things too. It can even send SMS messages. It can create phone calls and uninstall apps on your device. So you may want to warn your people again to be wary of this kind of stuff. Update warnings, all this kind of stuff should be treated with great suspicion. And since they're so common, and of course they get more common all the time because you've been relaunching Google 50 times a week to update it, people get very complacent about just clicking on OK, and then that creates a problem. And of course, you should apply these same standards to any app that you download from the App Store. Typo squatting, straight up malware like this, and all sorts of other nasties are just a click away, and then you'll have some real fun. A recent vulnerability in the Palo Alto Networks firewall has been exploited for about a month. But now, and so we've reported on that before, but now this has also been found to impact Siemens RuggedCom APE 1808 devices, or they probably say APE. which these devices are configured with the Palo Alto Network's virtual next-gen firewall. So this is one of those embedded firewall devices. Cisco, of course, makes this kind of stuff too now. But Siemens said they're preparing updates for the affected products and has a list of workarounds and current mitigation on their site. If you aren't familiar with it, the RuggedCom devices are one of those industrial boxes. It's like you can't put a Dell Optiplex server out there on a board in the factory. So they make these very, very durable, rugged kind of devices that contain operating systems and so forth. And this one allows you to run commercial apps, but you're running them in really nasty places. It's basically a firewall with a tank built around it. So in this case, we used to use this kind of devices in factories or places where there was a lot of nasty stuff going on. I remember setting up one where there was a lot of metal shards and oil flying about. And they said, these desktop computers we're using to control this metal lathe keep failing. And I'm like, imagine that. It's 110 Fahrenheit in here. You got oil dripping on it, metal shards going every which way. Yeah. And if you took a regular old firewall, like a poor old Pix or something, and put it in there, it probably would last about an hour before it failed. So, down at the alien meat mincing factory where you need to put a firewall in, it's always going to be covered in goo, maybe at the bottom of some kind of container, that kind of thing. But anyway, the APE 1808 has security solutions installable from Palo Alto. You can also use Fortinet or Nozomi. And if you don't, if you have any of these, you may want to go and check out the mitigations for now on that Palo Alto stuff and wait for the patch to come out. Shadow Server reported there was around 6,000 Palo Alto firewall instances out there that are vulnerable. And I presume some of those are probably these kind of Siemens devices. So, be worried. The vulnerability can allow an unauthenticated attacker to execute arbitrary commands with privilege, and it's been surging since a proof of concept of it was published last week. So before your APE 1808 goes berserk and compromises the alien meat mincing machines and causes them to become self-aware, do us all a favor and mitigate until you can patch. Okay? Simple. Not that simple, but yeah, you get the idea. Well, in the arena of things you probably shouldn't do, like most of the things we talk about before the show, the former athletic director of Pikesville High School in Baltimore, Maryland, has been arrested. Note the word former in the title. Yeah. Well, it seems that Mr. Darien got arrested and presumably made former due to allegedly, this hasn't gone to trial yet, but allegedly impersonating the school's principal using AI software to create a deepfake where the principal appears to be making racist and anti-Semitic remarks. Yeah, that'll get you in hot water. Darien was charged with witness, and listen to the list of charges: witness retaliation, stalking, theft, and disrupting school operations. I guess there's no law against making racist AI deepfakes in Maryland yet, but I noticed almost every state has already got this stuff going on to pass laws against this kind of deepfakes. Anyway, Darien was grabbed up trying to get on a late night flight at good old BWI Airport in Baltimore, and security personnel had stopped him because he had a declared firearm. So he wasn't just like one of those idiots that walks into the security line with, a Glock in their belt, but he had it improperly packed. So if you've ever traveled with the police, let me tell you, no matter how many badges you have, it takes a long time to get all the weapons checked in. They have all these rules, and different airlines have different rules, and they have to go through a whole process, and you have to go down to this counter, fill out paperwork. They have to inspect it. They have to inspect the weapon. They have to inspect the packaging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, if you have crazy people with you, well, that can also add to your check-in time. The kind of people who write little applications on their laptops that when you open it, it starts counting down from 10 kind of thing. Yeah. Thanks, Penn Jillette, for that one. He suggested that way back when and got fired from his job at PC Magazine, which was the only reason I subscribed to PC Magazine. He used to write the back page, but he put that out there right after 9/11 and people started doing it and getting arrested. So he got fired. But anyway, since this clown had a gun improperly packed, whatever it means, they ran his name and they found that he had a warrant for his arrest outstanding for all this crazy stuff. The recordings he had made were analyzed by forensics experts, and in fact, multiple forensics experts analyzed it, and they found they were not authentic despite the appearance of same. The fake audio was shared on social media back in January and sent to the school's teachers via email. The deepfake remarks were apparently quite upsetting. I did not see a transcript of them, but they actually were so upsetting that the police were sent to the school to advise on security measures regarding this. The principal was removed from their job temporarily, and the ensuing poop storm that resulted, it had a wave of hate mail to the school. Their social media was attacked, along with all kinds of physical threats against the principal and such, the usual things when this kind of stuff comes out. Now, Darian had been told that his contract was not going to be renewed next term due to frequent work performance challenging. So remember, when disgruntled employees just peed on your desk, remember that kind of stuff? We've all been there. That programmer you told is not cutting it, and they decided to dispose of bodily fluids in your wastebasket or on your desk or any of those kind of things. But this is a whole new level, right? It's an interesting new kind of swatting challenge, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I mean, spray painting Skinner sucks on the gym. Well, that's nothing compared to leaking Skinner in a porn video. Try not to think about that, really. I mean, seriously, try not to even imagine that. I'm sure such a thing exists, but you don't want to see it probably. Well, this article came, sort of hit close to home to me. Many of us have been forced to sign non-competes at some point. I mean, most of you probably have, even if you didn't know it. But I thought I would mention this coming storm to you. So the Federal Trade Commission, which is called the FTC in the United States, issued a new ruling that said non-competes will be banned and even voided. Now, that means that roughly 30 million Americans who signed them will now be able to change jobs because these things suck. I mean, basically what they do is they say, oh, you'd like a job with us, sign here and here and here. Now, if you hate it here and you want to leave, that's fine. We can't force you to continue working here. That's called indentured servitude. But let me guess, but you know what? You can't work in the, quote, insert nebulous language here industry for 3 years after you quit or we fire you. So basically, you can't quit if you have any sort of definable skill or even maybe if you don't. So if you're a Rust programmer and you can't work in programming for 3 years, and I've seen this, it wasn't Rust, but it was like a C programming job. And they basically said, if you try to leave, you cannot work in any sort of programming task for 3 years, or this is the penalty we will be able to impose on you in a court of law. So you can't quit. Gotcha. Now, these things are always justified around the company spending money training you and all this kind of stuff. But it's really just one of these things that's just commonly abused to try and allow terrible companies with terrible pay and terrible treatment of people to retain their employees, which doesn't do anyone any good. Well, except the company, of course. Although I will say, when you hold employees hostage, they don't tend to do their best work anyway. I actually consulted on one of those once, and they were like, why are our employees so bad? And I'm like, probably because they're not allowed to quit. You ever thought about that? Like, they don't really have a lot of motive to come in here, and it's like the floggings will continue until morale improves. But I mean, that probably might actually push somebody to make a deep fake of the CEO in an alien porn video with Sylvester Stallone and Alf. If you don't know who Alf is, well, you can look it up if you dare. Alf was a Muppet that ate cats on some 80s sitcom. Yeah, I've never seen it, but I know what it is. Anywho, this new rule was passed to ban non-competes despite a lot of opposition from the business lobby. Imagine that. The ban will void existing non-competes and bar the use of them in the future. But will it ever go into effect? The rule is already being challenged to halt the implementation, and various groups have already filed, multiple lawsuits. Everything from this is just like the opponents of minimum wage and things like that. Our company will go bankrupt without this. Oh, think of the children. Our CEO only makes $110 million a year. However, will we survive? But the ban, as it stands, would take effect in 120 days, so this year, unless it's blocked by legal challenges, which it probably will be. Sounds good, but I think it's going to be blocked by legal challenges. I mean, if you have to sign one of these things, you have to. I mean, but try to avoid signing them unless you get something really good. The last one I actually signed, they paid me pretty well as a consultant, and it was really, really specific as to what I could not do for a year after leaving. So I could still work. I just couldn't work in a very specific niche, which I could deal with, and they paid me really well. But I have been handed these stupid things. I've turned down consulting jobs because somebody handed me one of these things that said something like, will not work in the tech industry for a period of 5 years after leaving. Right. So basically, I'll be bagging groceries for 5 years or I'll be stuck here. You bet. Well, he's just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. And despite that South Detroit doesn't actually exist and it's really Windsor, Ontario, but regardless of that, it worked well in the lyric. But that city boy I'm talking about is Aaran Leyland. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, Dr. Doug, I love that song. You should sing it to me.
You probably don't want that unless we're both really, really intoxicated.
Which we obviously are, because that's how we do the show, right?
Well, yeah, how would we do this otherwise?
Okay, right, let's get into it. Today's article from the Hacker News and the original piece from Kamstra at Avast. There are tons of detail in the Avast article, which is in the show notes. I warn you, Doug got technical today, so I'm going to get a bit technical today. And you might be forgiven for thinking I'm challenging my inner Jason Wood, who, by the way, had a really cool announcement on LinkedIn yesterday, if you want to go and check it out. Okay, so North Korea's Lazarus Group deploys new Kowloon rat via fake job lures. In recent report, a vast security researcher, Luciano Camastra, detailed a sophisticated cyber attack orchestrated by the Lazarus Group, obviously a threat actor linked to North Korea. The group utilized fabricated job lures, happens guys, a tactic that they have employed in the past to deliver a new remote access Trojan named Kowloon. This attack was specifically targeted at individuals in the Asia region during the summer of 2023. Okay, before I go into the story, a bit of a refresh on Lazarus Group. Also known as Guardians of Peace or Whois Team or many other names, hacker group believed to be run by the government of North Korea. Definitely run by the government of North Korea. The group has been active since around 2009 and is known for cyber espionage and cyber warfare activities. The United States Department of Justice has claimed that the group is part of the North Korean government strategy to undermine global cybersecurity. And who wouldn't listen to the Department of Justice, right? And they're there to generate mostly cash, to be honest, as they call it in this, illicit revenue. So the Lazarus Group has been attributed to many significant cyber attacks, including Operation Troy 2009 to 2012, cyber espionage campaign that utilized distributed denial of service attacks, and of course the Sony Pictures hack. Who could forget that? And then even bigger, it gets bigger and better. WannaCry. Who could forget WannaCry? And then loads of bank heist stuff, because it really does seem to be about getting Western type money into North Korea. Okay, loads of cyber currency thefts, which I don't own anymore, by the way, so I can stop complaining about how bad it's doing after the cyber winter of about 10 years or however long it's been. Okay, so back to the rat. The Kowloon rat, apart from its standard functionality, has the ability to modify the last write timestamp of a selected file and load any received DLL binary from its command and control server. The rat serves as a conduit for delivering the FUD module rootkit. This rootkit has been observed exploiting a now patched admin to kernel vulnerability in the appid.sys driver. That is CVSS score 7.8. So not like Cisco, who I nearly talked about today. Then I remembered that it was Doug's favorite subject, so left it to Doug because he'd do much better anyway. So anyway, there's gaining kernel read-write access and ultimately disable security mechanisms, which is kind of cool, really. The Lazarus Group's campaign, known as Operation Dream Job, we all wish we had one of them. Well, obviously, working on Security Weekly News is my dream job, though. But anyway, has a history of using various social media and instant messaging platforms to deliver malware. The initial attack vectors trick targets into launching a malicious optical disk image ISO file containing 3 files. One of these files disguised as Amazon VNC client, that's a .exe, is actually renamed version of a legitimate Windows application called choice.exe. Anybody, when we named notepad.exe for just about everything. The other 2 files, version.dll and aws.cfg, initiate the infection chain. To be honest, guys, get absolutely over there and have a look in the show notes and have a look at, if you're into this type of stuff, the really, really, really detailed stuff in the a vast article from that guy. Is really, really good. So there's also exploited a critical flaw in JetBrains Team City, which was CVE 2023 42793 for you Rain Man types. I wish I was. It had a CVSS score of 9.8. So loads of memory stuff here, capabilities, staging the attack, establishing contact with CT servers. That was in a 3-stage process where they communicate with the first C2 server to fetch a HTML file containing the address of the second C2 server, communicate with the second CT server. Do you know what? It's really cool how they link this together, because we all know that nation states, like in really good hacker movies, like to chain things through many C2 servers for plausible deniability, or just deniability, actually. So anyway, they transmit data to a third C2 server using the address specified in the concealed data, all within an image. So it's all really cool stuff. There's some basic 64 encoded in there, of course there is. Data blob from the third CT server, which is the Cowlin Rat. And so Avast opined that the technical sophistication behind this multi-stage sequence, while undoubtedly complex and intricate, borders on overkill. Kind of cool. Is there ever overkill? The Cowlin Rat sets up communications with the Rat C2 server and paves the way for the deployment of the FUD module rootkit. In addition, the malware is equipped to enumerate files, carry out file operations, upload files to the CT server, alter files last modified, timestamp, enumerate, create, and terminate processes. This is so nation state, so cool. Execute commands using command.exe, download DLL files from the CT server, and connect to an arbitrary host. Really cool. So the guy that wrote this, do you know, I had to go on to YouTube and pronounce this guy's name, and I've kind of ruined it a little bit. Sorry, dude. Absolutely brilliant work. So the Lazarus Group targeted individuals through fabricated job offers and employed a sophisticated tool set to achieve better persistence while bypassing security products. It is evident that they invested significant resources in developing such a complex attack chain. Lazarus had to innovate continuously and allocate enormous resources to research various aspects of window mitigations and security products. Their ability to adapt and evolve poses a significant challenge to cybersecurity efforts. Kind of looking like these guys have upped their game a little bit. Anyway, back to Dr. Doug in the studio, who listens to all this and wonders why their code is so dumb. Look at their dumb code, guys. Anyway, peace out, party people. Back to Doug.
Thank you, Aaron. Yes, I often wonder that, but you know, I'm used to it by now. Dumb code is just dumb code. We've all seen it, and we've all seen it from commercial as well as individuals, and yeah. I taught a class once called Secure Coding for Intense School, and it was like, yeah, everybody was just like, really? We'll never get anything done. I was like, yeah, enjoy it. It's like, there was before this was a thing, right? And foreshadowing. All right. Thank you, Aaron. And finally, well, we did it. The world is saved. TikTok will never again steal our daughters and sons in the name of red commie pukes. Thank the Lord for this bounty of legislation which will ensure a bright and shining future working in the salt mines for all our children. Amen. Yes, the good old Congress, who could be trying to fix all sorts of real problems, but once again, they target in on fixing problems that didn't really exist until they created them, that they can't actually fix but will, and they won't work for people who don't want any of the fixes in the first place. The U.S. government has now officially, signed by the president and all, passed a bill that will force TikTok to be sold or banned nationwide. That'll fix it. President Joe Biden signed into law this week, which gives ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, 270 days to sell it to a qualified individual who is a U.S. citizen, or shut it down so that millions of users, like 170 million users, will have to use another Chinese-made platform, probably with a Chinese-made VPN, in order to get the videos of the way their cat's twitching while it's asleep or the fit of their new bikini online. What's a mother to do? Well, ByteDance has the option of selling this product to a U.S.-based company or individual. And of course, that company could be owned by a shell company, which is owned by a shell company, which is owned by a guy named Bert, who just happens to live in Nanjing, but is a real American. I guarantee it. I mean, his name is Bert. I mean, it's a valuable product, right? 170 million people use this thing. And of course, there are former American government leaders like good old Steven Mnuchin, who was the Secretary of the Treasury a few years ago, who said basically, if you need me to buy it, I guess I could. I mean, I couldn't afford to pay, a lot, but I could pay something, and then I would manage it in a safe American way, and I would never, ever, ever sell their intel. He didn't really say all that, but read between the lines. Of course, Meta, Snapchat, Alphabet, Elon Musk, who knows? Anybody could buy it. They got the cash. Now, TikTok has basically said they're going to shut it down. And that just means that the kids who will figure all this out before our really elderly Congress will go on and use a VPN, probably based in China, to pretend not to be in the United States so that they can access it like everybody does in other countries which do oppressive things like, say, China. I mean, I wonder what the penalty will be if you access it in that way. Now, I have a feeling that good old Steven Mnuchin will want the death penalty for any children who violate the rules and don't pay him his full worth if he doesn't get ownership of it. But I wonder how long it's going to take to explain what a VPN endpoint is to our lovely Congress people whose average age is 58 and 64, respectively, for the House and the Senate. But, we desperately need this, for the children who are all now using a new product called Kotkit. Yeah, they tried this with video games, too, back in the day. They said it would turn us all into Satanist, alcoholic drug addicts. Well, I guess that's true, but regardless, remember, Pepperidge Farm remembers. I get it. China's collecting intel on our children and us, but banning TikTok will not stop them. And it won't stop the new owner, Steven Mnuchin, from selling the same intel to some U.S. scumbag who is going to then turn around and sell it to China. Right? I mean, the U.S. scumbag's going to collect it and sell it. It's valuable. And they'll probably be selling it to the Chinese and the Saudis and the Iraqis and the Iranians and who knows what. Anybody that'll pay for it. It's just ridiculous. Whatever. And that's the news. Thanks, Aaron. And we will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.